Welcome to the Sedona Soul Sisters show, down-to-earth discussions on spirituality, metaphysics, paranormal, and healing topics. The Sedona Soul Sisters are the most trusted psychic mediums in Sedona. We are Rosalind Reynolds, myself, Ivory Lanou, Melissa Brace, and Terri-ann Reynolds. We have offices in Sedona, Arizona, where we see clients from all over the world. Today's topic is the Empowered Empath. If you have questions or comments and you want to ask at any time, doesn't matter how far after the airing of the show it happens, please email those questions to us. That email address is in the show description, and we'll be happy to answer them at any time. All right, boy, this topic is one I deal with every single day. And it's one that's been coming up in readings frequently too, especially through the pandemic. I've been an empath my whole life. I just didn't know it. I think before you realize there's such a thing as being an empath, people just tell you, you're so sensitive, or you feel like, you cry easily, or you just really can tap into other people's emotions, but you just think you're an overly sensitive person. Well, guess what? That's what an empath is. An empath means you feel the emotions of other people. So until you know how to get a grip on that, it feels a bit like a curse. And it can really limit you socially. It can limit you with where you go, what you do, who you're around. We're going to talk about how to turn that around today, because once you can get a grip on that, it really can become like a superpower for you. So I am not the only empath at Sedona Soul Sisters. Empaths and our business pretty much go hand in hand very often, don't they, ladies?
For sure.
So, ladies, you want to talk about like an experience you had before you knew what an empath was?
Well, I would describe that as we cry a lot. If I see anyone else crying and feel, the extreme sadness and sorrow in their heart, I usually have to cry too, because I'm in, totally in connection with that. And when I was younger, I just was like, what's wrong with me? How come anybody starts crying, then I start crying? But it's part of that connection that you have, that empathic connection. That's a spiritual connection. It's also, very much a connection of telepathic sympathies, I would call them, where you really feel their sorrow and you experience that.
Anybody else has some things they experienced before they knew they were an empath?
Yeah, for me, I was always for the underdog. I didn't like when people bullied other people. And so I really would get very upset and sometimes act out that way because it was so hurtful to me, what somebody else was going through, like Roz said, on the side of the crying, but just feeling the pain or the abuse or the trauma that person was enduring. It was almost too much for me, but I knew that they couldn't handle that. So I would then step up and help them with that, help protect them or stand up for them in any way that I could. Before I really understood what that was, I didn't understand how I could feel so much of someone else's pain.
Absolutely. I totally relate to what you're saying with that, Terri-ann, because I've always been the champion of the underdog. And when kids were picked on in school, mercilessly just bullied, like I wouldn't stand for it. Not only would I not do it, but I would interject myself between them and these people and tell them off and take up the championship for this person. Like I can remember that my school bus ride in Maryland in high school, there was a girl who lived in just abject poverty, and you could tell. I mean, we could see her house because the bus stop was right in front of her home, and those kids just didn't have the right clothing for winters in Maryland. She smelled bad. She looked dirty. And you could tell like the light had gone out in her eyes, and it just hurt my soul to see her. And she'd get on the bus and people would call her a terrible name related to the smell she had, and nobody would let her sit by them. I let her sit by me and she smelled awful. I'm going to say that. But there's no way I'm not going to let that girl sit by me on the bus. And later people are like, why did you let her sit by you? And I'm like, why aren't you? So I do think that tender heart, people might notice that about themselves, or other people will notice it about them. That tender heart and not being able to tolerate people being picked on and bullied, abused, is a big sign of someone being an empath that you'll see from childhood.
I think too. I mean, I find our culture now to be vastly different in, I guess, I mean, there's always been compassionless people, but it seems like now that's just become a cultural icon to be, brutally compassionless. And if anyone, experiences that kind of targeting and difficulty, I think Terri-ann's point was really well taken, because, first I feel very just simpatico, very sympathetic with this person. Then I'm ready to, come out and go on the rampage with the people who are treating other people that way. So I think if you've got a little warrior in there, it does bring that to the surface, as Ivory pointed out.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And so it's kind of funny, like I don't know why it took so long for it to be recognized as a spiritual gift, but I'm so glad that it is, because when people come to me and they're very clearly an empath and they want to know what's wrong with them, or they're asking, they've just recently heard about empaths and wonder if they are one, to be able to reassure them that this doesn't curse you for life. It's not something you have to just deal with. You can put some boundaries up. You can also use that gift to help other people. And I know all of us do in our work. There's no way you can be an empath and not be enhancing your work with that. Even if you're a salesperson, salespeople who are empaths can tune into other people's emotions really well and be able to use that to their advantage with sales or marketing. So it's not just spiritual jobs that's true for.
That's right. Even my husband is very intuitive in that way, and he was a salesman for many years. So he was able to tune in and sort of read people for what they needed, It's really, when you think about it, when you're young, you may not understanding, and you may, like you said, think of it as a curse. But then as you age, you start to understand it a little bit more clearly. And you see that it is really more of a gift, taking the abilities that you have and being able to give somebody else what they're needing at that moment is so crucial to our one-on-one connections with one another.
It is. And Roz, what you brought up about means you cry a lot made me start laughing, because I'm thinking about, as a child, just hearing all the time, you're too soft, you're just too emotional, you're too tender, this, that, and the other. But as an adult, I just had this flashback memory, as you said that, to sitting at Unity Church in Phoenix, which was the main church. It's huge. So I would go to a service and there were hundreds of people around me. And I would try to sit where I'm not too close to other people, but that's tricky in a crowded church because of what I'm going to tell you about. It wouldn't be very long into the service before I'd start feeling tears welling up. And I couldn't keep them in, and I'd be sitting there and tears are just rolling down my face. And I'm so embarrassed, and, I'm like sobbing, sopping them up with a Kleenex. And then the next thing I know, I feel sobs coming up, and I'm freaking out because I'm like, it's really hard. I'm trying to hold them in, but people are hearing them. And I'd have to get up and leave, because as soon as I make it to the restroom, I just burst into sobs. And at first I'm like, what in the world what is going on? I mean, yeah, he was a good pastor, but whatever he was saying was not that moving for me. And I really had to think about that. And I realized when you're sitting in a group of people, especially in a church, because a lot of people will go to church for comfort, spiritual comfort, there's a lot of pain, a lot of trauma going on in people who are around you. And so it's sort of like you're this antenna and you're picking up the pain from anyone in your energetic field, and it goes just right to your emotions and you're feeling all of it. And there's so much pain. It was just overwhelming to me, and it happened every time I had to stop going. I didn't have that problem in a little Unity church, but that big one was out for me. And that was before I knew about shielding.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect of this to bring in is you have to have some type of energetic shield that you're putting up around you a little bit, because otherwise you're so bombarded with all of this emotion and everything that's coming in from everyone else. You have to kind of take control of what you're allowing in your field, because otherwise, you'll just be so traumatized by the end of spending a little time there. I notice when I go into places, different businesses, different places, the energy shift of whoever is present. And you can really feel that anytime you're in a church environment. So, because, people have come there for a specific reason. I mean, it's not like you're going into Home Depot and they're trying to, do a project. So it's pretty touching when you go in a religious environment or spiritual.
But then that same ability, like when I was working in the field of mental health, I think that's what made me really good at my job, was that even if these people were trying to hide how they were feeling from me, I could hone right in on it and say, "You're really having a hard time today, aren't you?" "Yes, how did you know?" And I'd just say, "Oh, I could tell," but to be able to relate with them and talk with them and get them to open up about what's happening within was something that helped me a great deal with my work and being able to empathize with their situations, these were low income and homeless people. They had some really horrific, traumatic things going in their life. And it was hard. I wish I knew shielding at that time. I could have sure used it, because when I worked at the psychiatric hospital, I loved my work, I loved the clients, but I'd go home drained. I could have really learned to use those salt baths back then more than ever.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge complaint for a lot of people that are empaths or just learning about what it is to be an empath. And they don't understand the importance, like you said, of shielding and taking away, that, because when you take in that energy, like you said, it drains you, it depletes you, you go home, you're tired, you're aggravated, and they don't really understand the importance of shielding. I know I didn't when I started in this business, and I picked up a lot of stuff that unnecessarily that I needed to pick up.
Absolutely. And so, we get wise. I mean, as you continue your own spiritual journey, you gain knowledge, you gain tools. I think we should talk about these specific things that you can do to shield yourself. And I know we should have had Ed come on the show, because we'll have him come on and talk about that detox foot baths, because it's pretty incredible. I know for me, and I'm way overdue because of COVID, I need a detox foot bath in the worst way, because I feel better and grounded and purified after I've had that. It just takes all of that, all of the emotions that you absorb as an empath, and drains it right out into that, as Ross says, nasty water. And it is. You can look on our website to see some pictures of actual foot baths. They're probably our foot baths. And it's pretty crazy what the water looks like at the end of an hour. So you can do salt baths for yourself at home, though. I know some of you ladies know more details about that than I do.
I always do salt baths. When I had a bathtub, it was like sometimes every couple of days occurrence that it, especially, for me, it depended on how many clients I was seeing, what type of work that I was doing, how often I would need to do a salt bath. But there's so many people now that are really getting into doing the salt baths, and I use essential oils in mine, and I do candles, and I do crystals. So there's so many different things that you can also put into it to help alleviate some of that. And like you said, with the foot bath, it amazed me the first time that I did the foot bath, and to see all that goo come out of your body.
You know, I'm fascinated with it. Ed laughs at me. Ed is Roz's boyfriend, and he laughs because I love to see that water. I like to go see it when clients are getting a foot bath and check out their foot bath water because the colors of the water tell you what your issues were, like what's being purified. So it's very interesting. But as far as salt baths, like I have this little mini tub that, being 6 feet tall, I can either get my torso in there or my legs, but not both at the same time. So I do like half and half. And I like to use, I'm trying to think of it, Epsom salts. I put lavender oil. I have a chunk of Himalayan rock salt, and I put all that in there, and then some crystals that Roz's friend gave to us, and I put some of those in there. And I feel that's just so helpful. Like it's really a purifying experience and just removes a lot of the emotions that I picked up from others. And I mostly need to do that if I do a lot of mediumship work, because people get very emotional, or if they come in and they're just in a very distraught state when they arrive for spiritual counseling, then usually I'm going to end up going home and doing a salt bath. And if you can't get in the bathtub, I have actually found it pretty powerful to just get a big basin and put your feet in it. It's better than nothing. It actually does a pretty good job. So if you don't have a bathtub, you can use a bucket or anything your feet can fit in.
That's what I've been doing since we've been on the road now. So I have a basin that I use with my Epsom salt. And I actually found some Epsom salts that already have lavender in them. It was lavender or eucalyptus. And so I find that very beneficial. I miss it. I miss a bathtub the most.
Kind of hard to get in your situation, isn't it? You need a portable hot tub.
Yes.
I think
We'll talk to your husband.
one thing that people really don't necessarily put together is the detox foot bath and reflexology. And this is something that Melissa has always talked about, where you move from detoxing and then move into completely working with your nerves and, your organs. And I mean, the releasing process continues in a way because you're still releasing tensions and things that you've acquired. So
I'm going to second that one. I miss my reflexologist so bad. That's the worst thing about COVID for me, has been no reflexology. Usually I go every 2 weeks, year round, and it's powerful for me physically and emotionally.
Yeah. I feel like those are things together, those two items that are very, very, it creates like an energy wave and yet a detoxing wave too. Very powerful.
And
what were you trying to say?
Part of my work for a long time. And that's also one of my first real recognitions of being an empath before I knew the word, what everything meant. Because when I was 18, 19 years old, my job was to be a massage therapist. And the feeling, the empathy for others actually like awakened me to the bigger gifts like that I have, how to use them and things like that. But the energies through people. And I remember one of my very first experiences where I just all of a sudden knew this, beautiful lady. She was very quiet during her massage. She didn't speak. But I knew she was going through a divorce. I knew she was in deep grief and suffering. And it just kind of, resonated through me on accident. And at the end, she told me, and that's when it sort of awakened me to that empathy, as well as like what Terri-ann was saying, like I'm always still fighting for the underdog and believing in people that have been beaten down really badly, even if they come back at me and don't like me all that much. They don't like the light sometimes. But my favorite tool over all of the years, it was cool that you mentioned that, was the salt baths. And I cannot live without salt baths. But one of the things that I learned being a massage therapist and being in other people's energy so much, as well as doing readings, because for 25 years, I did readings or massages. And so it's, got a similar energy exchange. But I would put bowls. There's one under my bed right now. And in the kitchen, little bowls of Himalayan salt and a couple of crystals, and to help pull out the energy around me or in the atmosphere, so it doesn't get kind of gunky and stuck in the house or in the office or in the car. And so there are things like that I use, but the salt is my favorite. And frankincense I find will clear and help us get back into alignment and put our little shield up and clear out some of the heaviness. That's what I've noticed, as well as the foot baths. But the reflexology I've done for not my full-time job, but I've done for almost 30 years. And I cannot, it helps mind, body, spirit, and soul, and releasing and clearing and putting us in alignment with our own truth. So I love that one, and the foot bath.
Oh, yes.
I think too, people don't, and we were touching on this at the beginning, but I mean, this is a big issue. People don't realize how much they're bringing in to their energy field. And, we're certainly overall not taught to think that. We're not taught to feel that, we're sponging in everyone else's emotions and what they're experiencing. So it's good to kind of keep that in the back of our heads and realize that, we need to be protective of ourselves a little bit so that we can, continue to be healthy, do our work, etc. And for people who are working in an environment where they're in, they used to be before the COVID, in an environment where there were a lot of people and energies interacting. I've talked to some people who've had amazing experiences during this whole, reversal of that process, where now people are working at home and they're realizing how many years they were sitting in toxic emotional soup, empathing, all of that. So it's kind of an amazing time. Talk about awakening,
We're being forced to face a lot, aren't we?
Yeah, it's just amazing for people.
And the thing about it, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like when you get out of that abusive relationship and all of a sudden now you have peace in your life, and you're like, you didn't realize what a difference it would make not being in that environment any longer, and you feel differently. And so your eyes are open to that. I think it's a wonderful time too. I agree.
One thing about the whole thing of absorbing other people's emotions is it's accumulative. So if, let's say you have a really rough emotional day and you don't do a salt bath, the next day you're carrying what you had from that day plus whatever you absorbed from the next day, and on it goes. And I notice for myself, like if I don't do something to discharge those emotions I've picked up, that energy I picked up, I get sick. So, it starts with our emotions and then it works into physical illness. So one thing I do when I have students who are training to be professional empaths, I like to have them in the part where they're practicing shielding, is to do a shielding technique every day for a week and then don't do it for a few days, because that's when you really start to notice. So we've talked about this on the show. We're going to talk about it again, that in the morning before you leave your home, putting a protective bubble around yourself. Just visualize. It can be white, it can be golden, whatever works for you, but it's the light of God. It's just beautiful God light around you, protecting, and nothing emotional can get through that bubble that you don't want to. So do that before you leave your home. Do it for a week, and then don't do it. And I'm telling you, on the first day you don't do it, it may take you halfway through the day to figure out what's wrong. But I know if I forget to do my protective techniques, it doesn't take very long before I realize it's really off. My day is off. I feel off. I'm being affected way too much. So that's something that you can try to show yourself how much it is affecting you and how powerful some protective moves are.
I've been practicing that this week. Like in the last month, I've had a couple of people, I think it might be part of my initiation and my test of my growth in myself, learning and growing in myself. But it was a level of a couple of like people that I've had to deal with. And I've noticed this is very peculiar sounding, but I'm so sensitive that maybe like 5 minutes before they're going to text me, I start getting nauseous and very sick. And I don't know that I'm not thinking about them. I'm not noticing, I'm not thinking about them. And it's always something, perhaps the personalities would be very manipulative or rude or yucky, just some yucky. And so I just am like, oh, great, I have to deal with this person. And then I notice myself almost like getting too like sick. And so I was dealing with that this week because I was just so exhausted. Sometimes I don't take care of myself very well, and I push myself and I overwhelm myself because I don't balance and put things in order. And so I was kind of touched with that this week. So I had to lay down. I had to pray. I had to remove all of the extra stuff and the victim-y things and all the things that were going on. And I put my little fingers in the salt bowl, and I held on to some orgonite, which I have some right here. Just held on to some orgonite, and to realize that I wasn't protecting myself and shielding that I know very well that we need to do. It was just a little bit shocking, and I went, oh, darn it. Why am I not paying attention to myself? And I really kind of took a day to regroup and re-shield. Not that everyone's bad, not that people are meaning to do things either. It's just we don't want to pick up everybody else's frequencies or ideas or thoughts. And so I was really struggling with that this week. I just went, fine. And I didn't answer the phone, and I took some time, and I just said, back up everybody and everything, and salted myself, and I frankincense myself and did all kinds of stuff. And it's a little silly sounding, but I'm kind of grateful that I realized that I was taking care of myself. And all of us empaths, even the strong ones that are very aware for a long time, it's, we have moments and to go back into that heart space and talk to God or your angels, to me is just the answer, the truth, the answer every time.
Well, we have our practices for protection, and we get in a habit, but none of us are perfect. And things happen that you don't expect, and you might wake up late, or you get a phone call and you're running late. And that's the days that it's easy to skip your protection. And so it's never too late. It's not like you can't realize, oh my gosh, I didn't do my protection. Take a moment and do your protection. At least from that point forward, you're protected through your day. You haven't lost it.
Well, I think realizing too that, when you're doing any kind of interacting with other people, you can call it whatever you want, but you are doing energy shifting and energy work in a format, because your energy and everybody else's energy is like, kind of like, I think of it like really like little waves of, plasma or different things, because our energy kind of flows, in and out. And that's a really important facet, is to be able to say, hey, I need to take 10 minutes and rebalance myself and get my whole energy grid, my chakras and everything back in alignment, and get myself back to full balance. Because if you don't do that, if you don't stop yourself, I mean, I can remember, you know, being in situations where I just would absolutely start to fry. I mean, literally, it felt like an egg, like that, like that ad they used to have on television, the egg.
It's your brain on
cooking
drugs.
on the sidewalk. Yeah, that was me.
And you know, Roz, that's really important, because we need to be clear about this. You can be diligent about doing your protection of your energy every morning, and still something can break through. And so put another bubble. Sometimes Melissa and I were laughing about this in an earlier show, but like we'll put multiple bubbles around ourselves sometimes, whatever it takes for you to block it out. You know, it's not good for you to feel it to the degree that it interferes with yourself or with your thinking, with your day.
Yeah.
Even in readings, like, I do want to be able to pick up on their feelings, but I don't want to feel it in my body. Unless I'm asking to feel something in my body. I don't want to feel it to the point where I burst into tears, because then I'm not able to be professional. I'm not able to think about what they need. I'm just trying to stop crying. So, you know, there's that need to put up a little bit of shield, even when you're doing spiritual work.
It's true.
I worked on that over the years also with different travels and especially mediumship. I think mostly over the years I've been known for being a medium, and every day it's different people with different circumstances, and I agree. I can't. I have tissue on my desk now, 30 years of this, and I still feel it, and I had to step by step learn how to not carry that with me after each appointment. I care. I love all of the people. I'm so grateful to meet all of the wonderful people I've crossed paths with, but I can't carry that. And so we can look at that in any circumstance. Like when we go to the grocery store, I have a thing about going to the grocery store. I don't like it. It bothers me. Everyone's energy is big. And so step by step, I literally have to mentally focus and spiritually focus how to remain in that bubble and keep my energy in my own lane, and as in different ways, and like shopping, in regular life, and in work. And it took me quite a while. I used to, when I first started doing readings many years ago, I would find myself not breathing out during the appointment. So that was in mediumship. And so that was part of, it was accident. I noticed that I was accidentally, being an empath and holding on to some of the pieces of, distortion or whatever was bouncing around and going through. So it took me step by step by step. And so still sometimes I have to go back to it for sure and refocus and rethink about it and keep into my light and my heart and my soul, and cleanse and protection. And I am so dorky about that. Like I'll do it in the car and in the shower and just as I'm cooking something, and I'll go protection bubble, protection bubble, protection bubble. And it's really dorky. And then I start singing, and then that energy gets stronger, as well as the clearing gets stronger as well.
Lucky for you, we're partial to dorky.
Category we all do.
And I think doing spiritual protection through your day makes sense to me, especially when you do spiritual work. I don't do it while I'm cooking, but I certainly do it in the car. I have a ritual I do in the shower for washing negativity from within and without, and just starting well balanced for the day. I say things in the morning. I have things I say at night. And my bubbles I put around myself. I mean, that's like throughout my day and as needed. And when you do this kind of work, whether you're a psychic, a medium, a healer, you do some other kind of spiritual work, it doesn't matter. You're still needing to put these bubbles up. How do you know when someone's energy is starting to affect you other than crying? It all ties into emotions. Anybody want to start on that topic? You do?
I will.
Okay.
Over the years, there's a little bit of anxiety and sometimes confusion even for me. And I think, wasn't paying attention. I wasn't aware of that. And other things like TV shows, like sometimes I can watch the scary movie or, I have to admit that one of my favorite movies is Apocalypse Now. That's a little heavy. It's a little dark. You can't handle that every day, or I can't, and other people might. But it kind of starts flipping my energies, my mental energy as well, sort of low, and a little bit of anxiety, and sometimes even fear, not like I'm screaming or being hysterical in fear, but sometimes into like a little bit of fear-based energy. And then I catch myself and I go, hey, wait a minute, that's not your normal you. But it's that anxiety and worry and wanting to run.
That's a big one.
Yeah, gotta go. So those are some of my top ones that I've noticed for me.
For me, one of the danger, kind of a big red flag that starts waving, it's when I'm around toxic people. I will start to feel angry, which is not a normal state for me, and then it could escalate to rage. And after I've been around toxic people, if I spend too much time around them, that might last. I might have spurts of that for 4 or 5 days. And I had to really start paying attention, like, where is that coming from? Because I don't get angry easily and I don't rage. It's not me. And I realized that every time it was when I had pushed myself to stay longer than I knew I should around people who trigger me, people who are just toxic by nature. And I realized that's a sign for me that my energetic field is being severely damaged. That's not just a red flag. That's like, absolute 100 red flags waving. Get out of there. Stop putting yourself in the line of fire. So that's one of the big ones for me.
I think that you're suddenly overcome with extreme fatigue too, where you're dealing with people and maybe, a number of people, but as your day goes on, by the end of that day, you feel very drained because sadly, a lot of people who are experiencing, disturbance, trauma, whatever is going on in their life, they're using a tremendous amount of energy to try and get through these situations. And consequently, they want to draw some, or just want the comfort of being close, and being able to discuss things, and being told what is coming in certain situations. That can create a lot of exchange of energy. And when you're at the end of a situation where your day is coming to an end and suddenly you're just experiencing extreme fatigue, that's a little bit of a wake-up call, that you need to be doing what Melissa was talking about and going, whoa, okay, I got to step back from this and give myself a 20-minute, break here and rebalance and everything. And I think that's a pretty big indicator.
And Roz, you do your version of that, and I really admire that you do this for yourself. That about 4 times a year you take off,
yes.
And you go someplace, usually out in nature, that really speaks to you and rebalances you.
Yes.
And it always, I can feel your energy when you come back, and it always does just do such wonders for you.
I really have to have a certain amount of what I call alone time, just time to completely get in my own energy field and nature's energy field and allow that exchange. And if I don't do that, I get really grumpy.
We don't want that at
No,
Sedona Soul
no one wants
Sisters.
to be around
It's
that.
not fun. You can give her a bagel, and that does help, though. A little bagel with cream cheese does wonders for her, or a Danish.
It's really interesting because I think back to my childhood, and I think looking back at some habits you had when you were a kid is always really helpful. And one of the most restorative things for me when I was a kid was to go in my own room and shut the door and read or listen to music or do something where I just was kind of dealing with me. And of course, the opportunity to get out in nature was my family was pretty oriented to that. So those are things that kind of simple things that we can actually do. And I think we have to tune in on what really works for us. And I know that works for me. And I know that I need to do that. And I feel like I'm in a totally different mindset and energy and everything when I come back from being outside and seeing birds and animals, or going to the ocean because, I grew up around the ocean. So I think we have to look at that and we have to think what truly makes us, what heals us, what makes us feel better, and do it.
I think that's what I'm so passionate about now, is showing other people how important it is to get in touch with your body. I mean, we all know, but we all fight it sometimes. Life sort of has a way of taking over you. And it's, oh, I have to do the laundry, I have to take care of the kids, we have activities, and you're going and being pulled in all these different directions. And I think when you really get in touch with your body, like Roz was saying, that she needs that time, she knows intuitively that's what she needs. We all know what we need, but like Melissa said too, we have to give ourselves the space to do that. I think that that's so important, and that's so important for people to understand now, especially because I feel like society has been desensitized to all of this extreme violence and anger. So we as empaths take that on as a collective. And I think it's so important for us to step away from all that and just leave that behind and get in tune with ourselves. And what is it that we can do for us? And then when we're better, we can help others with their issues as well.
Absolutely true. And Roz, what you were saying about getting to the ocean because you grew up in San Diego just brought to mind how important it is to be aware of your connection to the earth. Are you a water person, a mountain person, a desert person? I think when you realize what that is, where do you love to be? Where do you feel the best? I'm two things. I'm an ocean person and I'm a mountain person. I grew up in Maryland, in the Appalachians, and I don't feel safe or right if I'm not at least in sight of a major mountain, which is one of the reasons I moved back up to central Arizona. And I've got this fabulous view really close of Mingus Mountain, and it just grounds me. It feels good and right when I'm near mountains. And so if you can figure that out about yourself, live there if you can. If you can't, go there for your balancing and your discharge of your energy, just to feel good again, and go out by yourself and sit for a while, do a little meditation, just sit and tune into nature. That's all very healing to discharge a lot of what you're picking up.
I think if you can live the place that you resonate to that vibrational energy of the earth, excellent. But if you can't, you really do have to prioritize, like you were saying, taking a break and getting in that space. And it has to be an amount of time that will work for you.
It does. And like you going 4 times a year to one of these places, like I think that's great because it keeps you, when things start building up, and I can feel it in Roz when it's building up like I can in anybody else, I know when she's going to say, we're going to go on a trip. I can feel it. And, there's just her
Yeah.
energy reaches a level. So does mine when I just need to take a break and get away. We all have that. One thing I want to cover before we're going to run out of time if we don't talk about it now, how do we use this in our work? How do we use being an empath to empower our work or make it more helpful for other people?
I think when you're able to tune in on how people really are feeling, you're able to tap into that, and you're so much empowered as to how to assist them in dealing with that, especially in relation to the things that you're shown in terms of what's happened. I mean, very frequently we're shown things that have happened in people's lives that they didn't realize that was such a traumatic event, or that was such an energetically changing and restructuring event. And so being able to say to them, okay, so I see that when you were such and such an age, you had this event that occurred, and it really refocused how you saw things, and it impacted you. And being able to help people recognize, because we're experiencing that, we're seeing that part of their record, of their Akashic record, which is what it is, is really important. That's a major aspect of being able to help people move forward, overcome, and feel joy in their life.
For me, I noticed at first with mediumship where I would feel in my body how the person died or physical ailments they had. That helps enhance a mediumship reading so that it's just another way to evidence that you're tuned in, you're talking with the spirit that they want to hear from. It validates that. And then that started happening in psychic readings, and it always had happened in healings. When I used to do Qigong energy healing, I would feel in my body where they were having problems they didn't even know they had yet, and they'd go get testing and they had issues there. And now I get that with medical intuitive aspects of my readings. I feel that in my body, and I'm able to either validate something they think they have or give them a heads up on something that they find out later there is a problem. But as far as like the emotional part of it, I agree with you, Roz, being able to tune into someone's emotions and get a really good read on where they are when they come in as you're talking about something, like just how their energy feels and their emotions feel as they're talking about an issue, gives you so much insight into their true state and what's really happening within that maybe they can't even verbalize. Sometimes they're too traumatized to verbalize that, but you can feel that. And then you can also feel it when they're improving. It helps a lot when I talk to a client I haven't seen in 6 months, and I can say immediately, your energy, oh my God, it's so good, and you feel so good. Emotionally you feel so great, and they just brighten up. They're like, I've been working hard on myself. So it's nice to be able to like tune in quickly and validate for them the hard work they're doing to heal themselves. We have not gone mute. The show is not over.
We're thinking.
They're thinking. I want you to understand that you can use an empath ability professionally. You can use it in spiritual work. You can use it in whatever, almost professions that you may already be involved in. I actually have a few clients who are realtors who have done training with me for empath development because they've realized that it's helping them with their sales of real estate, to tune into what's really going to work for a client, how they really feel about a property, tuning into, feedback from it, whether it's going to work out, and their sales have gone up. So it doesn't have to just be, again, that you work in spirituality, but even if you don't want to talk about it or think about it from a professional view, personally, recognizing you have some empathic ability, which most people do to some degree. Only if you are a sociopath, a psychopath, or a narcissistic person, you won't have that. So the majority of people have the ability to be empathic to some degree. It is not a negative aspect. It is not something to be ashamed of or pushed down. Again, it's a spiritual gift, and then if you can recognize it as that and really start tapping into it, as much as people do who want to develop their intuitive abilities for whatever, personal or professional, it's a lot like that.
One of my favorite things about the helping others in, like appointments or friends, family, clients, whatever it may be, is the recognition of when, like Roz said earlier, sometimes we have been and other people have been, because we're so empathic, in survival mode. And we do tend to forget, like I know in myself personally, I've had to live through some serious schniz. So some of those traumas have lived in me, and I had to step forward. I mean, no one else really cared. So you have to go to work. I have to take care of myself. I have to, go to the grocery store for myself. And sometimes we forget our passions, our focus, our divine plan, whatever words we would use for those things. And the coolest parts sometimes for me over the years, and seeing clients remember their passions as they heal and become balanced in their empathy, and to recognize, like you were saying, like we can use this for great good in all aspects of our lives. We don't have to be spiritual. We don't even have to be in that mode at all. Mm-hmm. And in our relationships and things like that, where people recognize their heart and that they had forgotten, or we had been in survival mode about, and I'm talking about myself and others, but recognizing that passion and that truth, and then being able to be their full selves, be in wholeness, and remember those pieces, the things that they like, to remember what they came here for. And I think, I can't speak for all of us, but I think all of us, like, that's one of the coolest parts about our work and our jobs, is to watch the people find their way in their lives, their truths, their happiness, their heart healing, and to me, to remember their passions and how, like, truly worthy they are. That's one of the coolest parts for me, when people realize how to use that empathic part of themselves and come out of survival mode and be in their hearts. And I just think it's beautiful. It's creative too.
And I'm glad you brought up the global aspect, because I firmly believe that it is a large part of what's going to bring our world, our planet, to enlightenment, is empaths waking up to being empaths and really developing those skills and using them. Because if we all have more empathy for one another, for other peoples, for other countries, for people that are living lives and experiencing things we haven't and may never will, but just have empathy for that, that is an enormous change for a people. That's when our hearts can open and we can have brotherly love planet-wide. I mean, it's going to take that kind of change to make that kind of difference on the planet. So that's another superpower empaths have. Opening hearts, greater understanding. You have been watching the Sedona Soul Sisters show. If you'd like more information about us or our services, please visit our website at sedonasoulsisters.com. You can listen to our show later on major podcast platforms or watch us on our YouTube channel. Tune in next Friday when our topic is Paranormal Activity. Ooh, I'm so looking forward to that one. In the meantime, have an enlightening week.